Hello everyone. Today, I will review the movie, The Shallows. Do you see this girl surfing? The blue beach and the high waves. No one would think that this beautiful place, like paradise, would soon turn into hell on earth for surfing enthusiasts like her. A great white shark over 7 meters long has drifted to this area. Even giant whales have been eaten by it, so how could it spare humans? Let's see if this seemingly weak girl can find a way to escape when surrounded by a shark. Please follow along with today's review. At a beach early in the morning, a local boy was absorbed in playing soccer when he spotted a hat with a camera attached. The curious boy picked it up and reviewed the video recorded on it. It showed 2 men surfing in the sea. The video then shook violently. Along with a cry for help, a shark's jaw appeared on the screen. Next to the hat was a skateboard with a smiley face. The boy was frightened and ran to find an adult. Before that, after her mother passed away, Nancy Adams, a beautiful American girl, decided to travel to a deserted beach in Mexico, which was also the beach that Nancy's mother had visited when she was pregnant with her. Nancy hired a local driver named Carlos to guide her. In fact, she had come here with another friend, but because her friend could not adapt to the climate, she fell ill and could not accompany Nancy. The car swayed through a large forest. Carlos told her to enjoy the surrounding scenery, because taking pictures was not as good as truly experiencing this place. After a long journey, Nancy finally arrived at the beach. Not disappointing her expectations, this place was truly a paradise. The blue sea was surrounded by mountains. Here, she met 2 tourists who were also surfing enthusiasts, happily playing offshore. Nancy offered the driver some money, but Carlos kindly refused. He was just passing by, so he gave her a ride. After Carlos left, she changed into a specialized swimsuit, carefully prepared her surfboard, and happily rushed out with the waves. Facing waves tens of meters high, she dove down to avoid direct contact and then surfaced like a fish. That moment made her so happy that she forgot everything else in the world. She had no idea that in just a few hours, she would face a survival challenge. After a while of having fun, the sun began to set. Nancy got to know the other 2 tourists. They were friendly and warned her to be careful. The reefs behind them would emerge once a day when the tide receded, and there was a type of poisonous coral underneath that could cause itching. Very quickly, the 3 of them became friends and played happily in the waves. They all showed off their skills. Each stroke and spin was executed perfectly, as if they were dancing with the ocean. After a surf session, Nancy returned to the shore to rest. She video called her younger sister, Chloe, to show off that she had reached her mother's beach. Chloe felt a little regretful that Nancy had not brought her along. Nancy smiled and promised to bring her here to play when she returned. At this time, Nancy's father told her to go home to finish her studies. It turned out that Nancy was a final-year medical student. However, she did not want to discuss this, so she hung up the phone. Then she took the opportunity to go back to the beach to catch the last waves of the day. A while later, the 2 young men decided to return to the shore and reminded Nancy to stop playing because it was getting dark, but she wanted to stay a little longer. So, the 2 sides said goodbye to each other. Nancy sat alone on the surfboard, swaying very comfortably. But very quickly, she felt something strange below. Nancy was a little worried, so she carefully pulled her feet up onto the surfboard. Luckily, it was just a few playful dolphins. Nancy happily swam after them, not knowing that they were encountering something scary, which made her run away. It was only when she realized that in front of her was the decomposing corpse of a humpback whale that she was frightened. A flock of seagulls was having a giant meal. This scene scared Nancy, and she fell off the surfboard. Below, a giant creature swam by. Sensing that something was wrong, Nancy quickly climbed back onto the surfboard, using the wave to return to the beach. But at that moment, a great white shark over 7 meters long rushed out to attack Nancy, knocking her off the surfboard. Immediately, the wave crashed down on her. Her whole body slammed into the coral below, and the surfboard's rope broke. Nancy struggled to get to the surface of the water to breathe. She looked around fearfully, and then quickly swam back to the surfboard. But before she could climb up, the shark bit her leg and pulled her down. The red color instantly darkened the water. Nancy was filled with pain and fear and struggled non-stop. Luckily, she was still able to surface again. In the middle of the vast ocean, hundreds of meters from the mainland, she quickly swam toward the whale carcass closest to her. The shark was angry because its delicious prey was already gone. It chased closely behind, wanting to eat Nancy. Nancy grabbed onto the open wounds on the whale carcass and climbed up just in time. But the danger had not yet passed. The shark was still swimming below. The wound on her leg immediately brought her back to her senses. As a medical student, she quickly used the remaining piece of rope on her ankle to tie it around the artery in her thigh, stopping the wound from bleeding too much. The pain made Nancy cry. At that moment, she saw her two friends leaving the shore. Nancy tried her best to call for help, but the distance was too great and the waves were too loud for them to hear. The cunning shark kept ramming the whale's body, causing her to almost fall off several times. Nancy realized that it was dragging her and the whale somewhere. If this continued, she would die. After a while, the shark got tired and left. She knew that she needed to leave this unsafe place. Nancy spotted a signal buoy, but unfortunately, it was quite far away. So, she aimed for a closer reef. While she was still thinking, the shark returned. It used all its strength to ram the whale's body. She took this opportunity to jump into the water, trying her best to swim toward the rock. Her injured leg was bleeding and in pain. Even so, Nancy could not give up. Luckily, she made it there just in time, but she stepped on a sharp, poisonous coral below. Nancy crawled to the shore in terrible pain from the soles of her feet. The shark still did not let her go. It swam around, waiting for an opportunity. Nancy tried to stand up to assess the situation. It felt hopeless with no one but her and the predator in this remote place. The mainland was very far away. Dizzy from losing a lot of blood, Nancy laid down to rest. Then she decided to use her earrings and to stitch the wound. Although she reassured herself, the pain of cutting and tearing flesh almost made her faint. After that, she decided to use earrings and a necklace to stitch the wound. She laid down to rest next to a seagull that was also injured. She reassured herself that someone would soon discover her, but the more she hoped, the more disappointed she became, and so Nancy fell asleep. At midnight, Nancy woke up from the cold. It had been 5 hours since the shark attacked her. She intended to take off the shirt that was bandaging the wound on her leg to wear for protection against the cold. But that didn't work either, so Nancy decided to tear off one of her sleeves to use as a bandage and put the rest back on. Although this method didn't completely solve the cold problem, it was better than nothing. Her leg had been bandaged for too long, and her toes were gradually losing feeling, so Nancy removed the bandage from her leg to let the blood circulate a bit before tightening it again to limit blood loss. Because of the pain and fatigue, she fell asleep again. When she woke up, she saw a swarm of sea crabs surrounding her. Seeing the seagulls eating crab meat, she also swallowed one for protein, but the fishy smell made Nancy vomit it all out immediately. She observed the sea surface and saw that everything was quiet, with no sign of the shark. The surfboard was near her. The surfboard was her only hope to get to shore. Nancy decided to leave the rock to retrieve the surfboard. As soon as she got close to it, the smell of her blood attracted the shark. Nancy had no choice but to quickly swim back to the rock. She climbed up again, and luckily, the shark didn't catch her. However, the wound became more painful. At this desperate moment, she discovered a man lying on the beach. Nancy kept calling for help. The calm sea in the morning allowed the man to hear her. Unfortunately for Nancy, the man was drunk and thought she was waiting at him. She tried to signal him to her backpack, which contained her phone, hoping he could call for help. However, this man brazenly stole her things despite her pleas. Seeing him carry her backpack and leave, Nancy was extremely disappointed. Before leaving, he also intended to take Nancy's surfboard from the sea, quickly drawing the shark's attention. Nancy tried to warn him to stop or else he would be attacked by the shark, but he didn't care and leisurely hugged the surfboard to shore. Immediately after that, he disappeared into the sea. The scene before her terrified Nancy because the man crawled to the shore, but he only had his upper body left and died of blood loss soon after. The next morning, a seagull cried loudly to wake Nancy up. She swore that even if she died of hunger or thirst, she would never jump into the sea. Hope returned when the two tourists Nancy had encountered the day before reappeared. She vaguely thought it was an illusion until she saw the two familiar figures. She tried to sit up and scream to warn them, but they thought she had come earlier than them. Nancy warned them not to go into the sea because there were sharks there. The two guys didn't believe that Nancy was serious. They still surfed out to sea. The result was that right after that, the shark jumped up and swallowed one of them, to the horror of the other guy and Nancy. The other guy was scared and tried to swim to the rock where Nancy was. Suddenly, a wave came and pulled him away. She thought that he had been eaten by the shark. Unexpectedly, the young man appeared again. Just when he was very close to Nancy, he was pulled down by the shark. The board flew up and broke in half, falling down. Then the man appeared again, painfully calling for Nancy's help. She tried to pull him up to the rock, but the shark dragged him into the water and killed him. After witnessing these tragic deaths, Nancy was almost exhausted. There were only 3 hours left until the tide would rise, and the rock she was lying on would also be submerged. She lay unconscious on the rock until dusk. Nancy looked towards the distant signal buoy and saw the predatory fish still circling around her. She tried to sit up. First, she approached the seagull that was always nearby and named it Stephen. After checking that the animal had a dislocated wing joint, Nancy adjusted its bones. Stephen was in pain and bit her hand. Nancy knew she had to do something before the tide rose. It was at this moment that she discovered a helmet with a camera attached that belonged to the unfortunate man earlier. Nancy used a stopwatch to calculate that one lap of the shark took 32 seconds. Then she risked leaving the high rock to go to the lower side. The maneuver went as planned, and she reached safety. Nancy tried to reach out to pick up the helmet, but the waves came and swept her into the water. Her hand was cut by the coral again. Nancy quickly pulled her leg to the shore and looked around. Strangely, the shark was nowhere to be seen. She realized that it was starting a new swim, forcing Nancy to take the risk and go into the water to get the helmet. After many attempts, she finally succeeded. Immediately, the shark pounced on her from behind. She was startled and fell into the sea, her waist hitting the reef. Fortunately, the shark was so big that it got stuck in the coral. Nancy managed to return to the initial rock just in time. She reviewed the previous video and noticed a hook stuck in the shark's mouth and one of its teeth lodged in the helmet. Nancy then used the camera to record her life-threatening situation and her final words to her father and sister. She let the helmet float in the sea, hoping that someone would pick it up and come to save her. If something bad happened, that video would be her last goodbye to her family. But time waits for no one. The tide was rising rapidly. The rock she was on was gradually sinking into the sea, where the shark was still waiting to swallow the girl. The heroine thought she had no choice but to take another risk. Nancy decided to let Stephen back to shore with the remaining broken piece of board and waited for the shark to circle behind her so she could jump down. However, in front of Nancy was a swarm of poisonous jellyfish. She had no other choice because the rock had become submerged. Nancy dove into the water and swam quickly towards the nearby signal buoy. Although she carefully avoided the jellyfish, she was still stunned on the shoulder. Nancy endured the pain and tried to reach the shore. The shark quickly opened its mouth wide and chased after her, angrily rushing into the jellyfish and getting stung by them. Taking advantage of the time the shark sped swimming around, Nancy sped up and climbed onto the signal buoy. But the shark did not let her go. It violently hit the bottom of the buoy, causing Nancy to fall. Her hand was still gripping the iron piece, and she used all her strength to stab the shark's belly with the broken iron bar. While the shark had not yet turned around, Nancy struggled to climb up onto the platform. Below, the sea monster was still trying to attack, but only hit the pile of iron. Exhausted, Nancy crawled into the middle of the signal buoy, wanting to rest for a moment. At that moment, she saw a ship passing by. Realizing this was her rare opportunity, she searched around and found a box. However, it was rusted and could not be opened. Nancy quickly used a sharp shark tooth to pry it open. The force was too strong and accidentally set the pile of bullets into the sea. Inside the box was a flare gun. Nancy reached out to try to retrieve the bullet that had fallen into the water. She quickly loaded it into the gun and fired. But even more shocking was that she only fired one shot that had no effect. Seeing the ship moving further away and the bullets floating in the water, Nancy desperately shook herself and the buoy into the water. She picked up the bullets and fired another shot. This flare spread out in the sky, but the other ship had already gone too far. The people on board did not see her. Another night came. Nancy collapsed in despair. On land at this time, a boy appeared. He picked up the helmet with a camera that Nancy had let drift into the sea. The horrifying scene recorded on the camera made the boy run home to call for help. Unbeknownst to him, Nancy was still alive on the signal buoy. Unfortunately, the blood dripping from Nancy's leg into the sea attracted the crazed shark, which attacked the buoy again, almost throwing Nancy into the water. Regaining her senses, she decided to fight this beast to the death. Nancy fired a shot at the shark, but only hit its thick layer of fat, which enraged it. The shark's attack broke one side of the chain, causing the buoy to tilt. She climbed to the highest point, and after observing for a while, she noticed an oil slick from a whale's carcass. Nancy immediately fired a third shot. This time, she successfully burned the shark, injuring it and forcing it to dive. However, the sea monster still refused to die. It madly attacked the buoy, using its teeth to bite the supports in an attempt to drown her. The buoy lost its balance and fell, throwing Nancy into the water. She tried to swim up and hide among the pile of iron to avoid the shark's jaws. Nancy looked around but couldn't see the monster. It suddenly jumped up from below. Terrified, she tried to hide behind the iron frame. The cunning shark swam around again, looking for another opportunity to attack. At this moment, Nancy noticed that the buoy's chain connected to the anchor pole below was jagged with long, sharp iron bars. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. At that moment, Nancy resolved to destroy the enemy and no longer hope to survive. She decided that as soon as the shark turned back and tore the buoy, Nancy jumped into the sea and used the rope that had bandaged her leg wound to tie to one end of the chain. At that moment, the shark was stuck by the hook in its mouth, giving Nancy a chance to execute her plan. After tying it tightly, she grabbed one end of the rope and pulled the iron chain hard, causing it to break loose and fall into the sea. Nancy was also pulled straight down by it. The greedy shark immediately struggled and chased after her. As soon as the pile of iron appeared before her, Nancy quickly dodged to the side. The shark, with its massive body, swallowed the entire pile of reinforced concrete, dying on the spot. Nancy had won this life-and-death battle, but she was immediately exhausted afterward. At this time, the boy who had found the camera washed ashore earlier quickly informed his father to come to the rescue. Coincidentally, the boy's father was Carlos. He quickly ran to the beach and found Nancy unconscious on the shore. He immediately began performing CPR and instructed his son to call an ambulance. Fortunately, Nancy woke up later. She vaguely recognized her mother's figure smiling in the warm sunshine and learned that Stephen the seagull was also safe. One year later, at the beach, Nancy had completed her studies and become a doctor. This time she returned, but not alone. Nancy fulfilled her promise to go surfing with her father and younger sister, Chloe. Nancy's father told the two sisters that their mother, watching from above, would be proud of their indomitable spirit and their refusal to give up. The movie ends here. Through this story, we see that equipping ourselves with swimming skills is extremely important. We must learn to swim, as it is a vital life skill that helps protect us in dangerous situations related to water. Additionally, it is crucial to train ourselves to develop a resilient spirit, perseverance, and a strong will, and to never give up when facing challenges. Thank you very much for your support, which has allowed the channel to develop as it has today. If you found this interesting, please give me a like and leave a comment about this movie. And especially, please subscribe to the channel to follow my latest movie summaries. See you again, my dear friends.